You know, usually when you want to build a machine that launches a projectile at terrifying speeds, like, say, a medieval catapult,
Right.
you follow a very strict, almost sacred blueprint. Everything has to be perfectly symmetrical.
Yeah, you need that long, smooth runway to build up maximum momentum.
Exactly. You need all those moving parts operating in complete, predictable harmony.
Well, because that is just how basic physics dictates that we generate power, right? Force equals mass times acceleration.
Right.
And to get that acceleration, you need that long, unimpeded run-up to generate the necessary kinetic energy before you actually release the ball.
But then imagine someone walks into the factory, looks at those perfect blueprints, and just completely throws them out the window.
Yeah, it literally tosses them.
They build a machine with, like, stiff, jarring legs,
Yeah.
a hyper-flexible whip for an arm, and a runway that is barely even a light jog.
Which, by all accounts, it just looks completely chaotic.
It does, and yet somehow it fires the most devastating, mathematically impossible projectiles we have ever seen. Welcome back to the show, everyone.
Yeah, we're glad you're joining us.
You sent us an incredible stack of sources for this deep dive today.
Yeah.
We've got biomechanical data from IIT Kanpur, intense Reddit debates, and some really revealing biographical articles.
And the timing for this is just perfect. We are looking at a player who is fresh off a historic 2026 T20 World Cup victory.
An unbelievable match.
Truly. He took 4 wickets for just 15 runs in the final against New Zealand, won player of the match, and is now genuinely being hailed across the entire sport as the Bradman of bowling.
Right, which, comparing him to Donald Bradman is essentially calling him the statistical greatest of all time.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we promised you we were going to look way past those highlight reels today.
We want to uncover the actual hard science here.
Yes, the science, but also the conflicting origin stories and the intense psychological mastery that created the ultimate modern fast bowler, Jasprit Bumrah.
And really the foundation of all that weirdness, all that unorthodoxy, it starts in Ahmedabad. Because to understand the bowler he became, you really have to understand the boy. His early life was marked by sudden tragedy, honestly. He lost his father when he was just 5 years old.
Wow, that's incredibly young.
Yeah, so he was raised by his mother, Daljit, who was a school vice principal.
Which means education was an absolute priority in that household.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Paramount. And like millions of other kids in India, his introduction to the game wasn't on pristine, manicured grass pitches.
No, of course not.
It was tennis ball cricket, playing in narrow hallways, living rooms, and small concrete spaces in his neighborhood.
Which naturally forces you to adapt your body, right?
Exactly.
But his introduction to organized, proper cricket was actually pretty brutal. I mean, he had this highly unorthodox action from the very beginning.
And kids, especially in competitive sports, can be incredibly cruel to anything that looks different.
Totally. His peers relentlessly bullied him. The sources note they constantly called him a chucker.
Now, for anyone unfamiliar with the weight of that word, calling someone a chucker in cricket is basically a massive attack on their fundamental integrity.
It's basically calling them a cheater.
Right. It means you are accusing them of throwing the ball with a bent, straightening arm, kind of like a baseball pitcher.
Which is strictly illegal in cricket.
Exactly. You have to bowl with a straight arm. The kids were convinced his action was cheating because it looked so strange. And, well, more importantly, he was bowling so fast they simply couldn't handle it.
Right, they were just getting blown away.
But this is where a pivotal figure enters the narrative, Kishore Trivedi. He was a former first-class cricketer who was running an academy at Bumrah's school.
And what I love about Trivedi is he doesn't just dismiss the kids' complaints, but crucially, he doesn't dismiss Bumrah either. He actually puts in the work.
Yeah, he plays the silent observer. The sources say for 3 full days, Trivedi just stands back and watches Bumrah bowl in the nets.
Just analyzing it.
Right. And after stripping away the bizarre aesthetics of it all, he realizes the action is completely legal.
Wow. So the arm actually remains straight at the point of delivery.
Yes. It's jarring to the eye, absolutely, but it's totally within the rules of the game. The kids were just calling him a chucker because they were terrified of his pace.
That makes so much sense.
So Trivedi takes him under his wing, but there was an immediate hurdle, which was Bumrah's mother.
Right, the vice principal.
Exactly. She was watching her son's grade slip and wanted to pull the plug on his cricket dreams entirely.
Which is just such a universal parent-athlete conflict, isn't it?
Totally. But Trivedi puts his own reputation on the line here. He makes a literal binding pact with her.
Really, a formal pact.
Yeah, he asks for a 3-year window. He promises that if Bumrah doesn't make the Gujarat state team in those 3 years, Trivedi will personally take all the blame for ruining the boy's future.
Talk about pressure.
Right. But the condition is she has to let him focus almost entirely on cricket, just maintaining the bare minimum passing grades in school.
Well, the gamble obviously pays off. But digging through the biographies we're looking at today, there is this fascinating contradiction about his signature weapon.
Ah, the Yorker.
Yes, the Yorker. For context, a Yorker is a delivery aimed dead at the batsman's toes.
It's designed to pitch so close to their feet that they have a fraction of a second to jam their bat down to block it.
Right. It's incredibly difficult to bowl accurately. Now, Trivedi claims he is the one who taught Bumrah the Yorker.
It does say that, yeah.
He says he used to place a physical object at the base of the stumps and wouldn't let Bumrah go home until he hit it 10 times.
But, and this is where it gets interesting, Bumrah himself has a totally different version of events in his interviews.
Right.
He says he perfected the Yorker at home entirely on his own. He was constantly throwing a ball against the wall, and to avoid waking up his sleeping mother in the afternoon, he started aiming right at the floor skirting.
Where the wall meets the floor.
Exactly, so it wouldn't make a loud echoing noise and wake her up.
It's literally like a superhero having two different comic book origin stories. I mean, did the wise old mentor forge the weapon in a training montage, or was it born out of total necessity in a quiet hallway?
It's a great question.
I tend to lean toward the hallway story, honestly. I think elite athletes often have to self-teach their greatest, most instinctive weapons in total isolation. Necessity and a sleeping mom is the mother of invention here.
That's a fair point, though Trivedi's foundational discipline likely made that hallway practice possible, giving him the stamina and focus to repeat the motion.
Oh, for sure.
What's fascinating here is how Bumrah navigated all of this external noise. He had kids telling him his action was illegal. He had traditional coaching wisdom suggesting he should smooth out his mechanics.
Run in faster, look more like a textbook fast bowler.
Exactly, but he completely refused to let peer pressure or traditional norms iron out his unique natural traits. He just fully embraced the weirdness.
Okay, so we had this kid with a hyper-flexible whip for an arm and chaotic mechanics. But bowling at the elite, international level requires pinpoint millimeter accuracy.
Right, you can't just be wild.
Exactly. How do you control a hurricane like that?
Yeah.
That requires a total rewiring of his brain, which smoothly transitions us to his time in the big leagues.
The discovery itself is almost cinematic. It's 2013 during a domestic T20 match in India. John Wright, the former head coach of the Mumbai Indians franchise, is in the stands scouting.
Okay.
And he sees this skinny kid with a bizarre, stuttering run-up try to bowl 12 consecutive Yorkers.
12.
Yeah. Wright literally notes to himself, bloody hell, I've never seen that before. He doesn't even wait for an auction. He signs him immediately, straight onto the Mumbai Indians roster.
That is wild. And just to stress test him, Wright throws him into the practice nets against Sachin Tendulkar.
Who is arguably the greatest batter to ever hold a cricket bat.
Exactly. And Sachin comes out of that net session and says, who is that kid? He's really hard to pick up.
Yeah.
I mean, when Sachin Tendulkar says your bowling is impossible to read, your career is basically validated right then and there.
True, but he still wasn't a finished product. He had the physical tools, but his temperament was wild. And this is where Lasith Malinga comes into the picture.
Right.
Now, the public narrative, repeated everywhere, has always been that Malinga, who was the ultimate Yorker king of his era, took Bumrah under his wing and taught him how to bowl that devastating Yorker.
What Bumrah explicitly denies, I loved reading this part of the sources. He is on the record saying Malinga did not teach him the Yorker.
Nope, he didn't.
So what did the veteran actually pass down to the rookie then?
Mechanically, Malinga taught him the outswinger.
Okay, what's that?
It's a delivery that subtly curves away from the batter in the air, creating a false sense of security before catching the edge of the bat.
Sneaky.
Very. But far more importantly than mechanics, Malinga taught him emotional control. Bumrah admitted that in his early domestic days, he was an angry, highly aggressive bowler.
He would sledge batters, yell at them.
Yeah, he let his raging emotions dictate his bowling spells. Malinga sat him down and explained a crucial truth about elite sport anger clouds your judgment.
Because an angry bowler is a predictable bowler. If a batter knows you are furious, they know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to try and bowl as fast and short as possible to physically hurt them.
Right, you stop thinking.
Exactly.
Malinga taught him how to keep an ice-cold head to execute incredibly complex multi-over plans under extreme pressure.
Just pure calculation.
He helped Bumrah realize that when you are standing at the top of your run-up, looking down 22 yards at a batter who wants to destroy your career, you are completely alone.
You can't rely on anger or the crowd.
Exactly. You have to
Yeah.
rely entirely on your own cold, internal analysis.
Wait, hold on. Here's where it gets really interesting, and my brain is honestly totally stuck on the physics of this next part.
Let's hear it.
We know his mind is now this perfectly calm, analytical computer. But the physical delivery itself still looks incredibly chaotic. Let's look at the actual physics from the sources.
Okay, let's do it.
Because you have a guy who is barely jogging, yet the ball is acting like it was shot out of a cannon. How does the math on that actually work?
Well, Fox Cricket recently used a new AI-driven biomechanical technology called Fox Bio to break down his action frame by frame.
And
Researchers at IIT Kanpur have studied the aerodynamics of his deliveries. They completely shattered the historical myths of fast bowling, starting with that run-up we talked about.
because the blueprint of a fast bowler is someone like Shoaib Akhtar or Brett Lee sprinting in from the boundary ropes like an Olympic sprinter.
Exactly. But the sources say Bumrah's run-up speed is only 18 kilometers per hour.
Which doesn't sound very fast.
To put that in perspective for you, Pat Cummins, the Australian fast bowler, runs in at about 23 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
Ravindra Jadeja, who is a spin bowler, runs in at 16 kilometers per hour.
Wait, really? So Bumrah is barely moving faster than a guy whose entire job is to bowl slow spin?
Exactly. This destroys the myth that elite fast bowling requires massive run-up momentum.
So if he is essentially just jogging up to the crease, where is that 140 km/h speed actually coming from? It violates the basic physics we talked about at the start.
It comes from a combination of a rigidly straight front leg and a hyperflexible wrist.
Explain that.
When Bumrah delivers the ball, his front leg hits the ground and locks completely straight. It acts like a pole vault planting into the ground. It creates a brutal, immovable core of power.
Oh, I picture it like the violent cracking of a whip.
Yes.
It's not about running fast. It's about the incredibly efficient transfer of kinetic energy right at the point of release. You stop the base dead in its tracks, and all that energy has nowhere to go but violently snapping forward through the upper body.
The Fox Biotech proved exactly that. It showed that Bumrah's arm speed right before release is about 75 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
But the ball leaves his hand at anywhere from 135 to over 140 kilometers per hour.
That's a massive jump.
Which means his wrist, that hyperflexible, almost double-jointed flick at the very last microsecond, is generating an astonishing 60 kilometers per hour of raw power entirely on its own.
That is just absurd. But it gets crazier because it's not just fast, it's unplayable. The IIT Kanpur research explains why batters look so foolish against him. It's something called the reverse Magnus effect.
Right. Professor Sanjay Mittal discovered that Bumrah's specific combination of sheer speed, his perfectly upright seam position, and a rotational speed of 1,000 RPMs on the ball gives it a spin ratio of precisely 0.1.
Okay, math time.
Yeah, in fluid dynamics, this specific mathematical threshold pushes the ball into the reverse Magnus effect regime.
Let's break that down for everyone because the mechanism is honestly mind-blowing.
Go for it.
Normally, when a bowler or a tennis player puts backspin on a ball, it creates a cushion of high-pressure air underneath it. That's the regular Magnus effect.
Right, it makes the ball float or hold its trajectory longer than you'd expect.
Exactly. But Bumrah's exact combination of speed and spin flips that aerodynamic cushion completely upside down.
The high pressure moves to the top of the ball. The physics literally force the ball downward faster than gravity alone would pull it.
That's insane.
That's why world-class batters constantly think the ball is coming at waist height, and suddenly, in the last 5 yards, it dips sharply right onto their toes.
Because their brains have calculated a standard trajectory, but the air pressure is physically changing at mid-flight. He has literally weaponized fluid dynamics.
He really has.
So we have a guy who has weaponized fluid dynamics, married it to a hypermobile whip-like wrist, and layered it with monk-like emotional control.
It's quite the combo.
How does that actualize on a scorecard? Because taking that biomechanical perfection and calm mindset, the numbers we pulled from these deep dive Reddit debates comparing him to historical legends are just staggering.
Yeah, the cricket subreddits love debating the greatest of all time. They're constantly comparing Bumrah to undisputed legends like Wasim Akram, Dale Steyn, and Glenn McGrath.
Which is elite company.
Very. And when you put the raw numbers side by side, Bumrah's case becomes incredibly hard to argue against. He currently holds a test match average of 19.8 and a strike rate of 42.7.
For those of you listening who don't spend your weekends digging through cricket databases, let's contextualize that a bit.
Please do.
A bowling average is how many runs you concede for every wicket you take. So lower is better. A strike rate is how many balls you have to bowl to get a wicket. Again, lower is better.
Right.
Bumrah's strike rate means he is taking a wicket every 42 balls, which is a ruthlessly efficient pace. Wasim Akram, who is known as the Sultan of Swing, had an average of 23.6 and a strike rate of 54.6.
So Bumrah is taking wickets significantly faster and giving up fewer runs to do it.
Exactly.
Furthermore, the true litmus test for any fast bowler from the Asian subcontinent is how they perform in SENA countries.
SENA, so that stands for South Africa, England, New Zealand, and Australia, right?
Yeah.
Because pitches in India or Sri Lanka are often dusty and spin-friendly, whereas SENA pitches are hard, green, and bouncy. Subcontinent bowlers historically struggle to adapt there.
Yet in SENA countries, Bumrah averages a phenomenal 21.4 with 159 wickets. In fact, he recently surpassed Wasim Akram for the most test wickets ever taken by an Asian fast bowler in those specific hostile conditions.
Wow. And we just saw this total dominance play out on the biggest stage imaginable. I mean, look at his recent 2026 T20 World Cup heroics.
Unbelievable performance.
In the semifinal against England, it was an absolute bloodbath for the bowlers. The batters were hitting everything out of the park. The match yielded 499 total runs.
Just massive scores.
But in Bumrah's allotted 4 overs, he conceded just 33 runs.
Including giving up only 6 runs in the crucial 18th over, bowling against a batter who had already scored a century and was seeing the ball like a beach ball.
Right. And then, as we mentioned earlier, he follows it up in the final against New Zealand with 4 wickets for 15 runs to win the trophy.
Which brings up a concept I saw mentioned repeatedly by analysts in these sources, the Bumrah threat.
Oh, I love this.
It's not just the actual wickets he takes, it's the psychological terror he inflicts on the opposition before he even bowls a single ball.
Yes. Teams are so terrified of losing wickets to him that they completely alter their fundamental game plans.
They do. In a 20-over T20 game, teams are treating it like a 16-over game.
They actively decide to just survive Bumrah's 4 overs without attacking him at all. They accept they won't score much off him and try to make up the missing runs by teeing off against every other bowler on the team.
Which is a brilliant, albeit desperate strategy, but ironically, it builds massive pressure at the other end.
Because they're taking insane risks against the other bowlers to make up for those quiet Bumrah overs.
Exactly, which leads to wickets for his teammates. Or the pressure to score gets so high that they are forced into making mistakes against Bumrah anyway.
Just imagine that reality for a second. I want you to imagine being so undeniably mathematically good at your job that your competitors entirely change their core business strategy just because you walked into the room.
They don't try to beat you, they just try to survive you.
That is the ultimate flex.
It really is the definition of dominance. But reaching that level of greatness, well, it rarely comes without a severe personal cost.
So what does this all mean? We have these flawless statistics, this perfect biomechanical machine who conquered the sport. But the human story behind those numbers, buried deep in these sources, is so much more complicated.
It is. We have to go back to Kishore Trivedi.
The coach from Ahmedabad, who protected a young Bumrah from the bullies.
Right, the one who observed his action and made that crucial 3-year pact with his mother. The recent interviews with Trivedi are actually quite heartbreaking to read.
Yeah, they really are.
Trivedi reveals that he hasn't spoken to Bumrah in 10 years. Their last contact was a brief, fleeting phone call in 2016 when Bumrah first made the Indian national team.
He called to say, "Sir, I've been selected." And that was the end of the conversation.
Not a single word since. And Bumrah's mother, the woman Trivedi made that intense pact with, she hasn't called either.
And Trivedi still goes to that very same academy every single day. He watches every international match Bumrah plays on television.
He tells the interviewers he holds absolutely no grudges, stating that Bumrah will always be his child, no matter how famous he gets.
But you can feel the sting of that decade of silence radiating off the page.
You really can. If we connect this to the bigger picture of what it takes to be an elite athlete, It really highlights the intense, sometimes brutal isolation of elite performance.
Yeah.
To reach the absolute pinnacle of a global sport, to become a generational talent, it often requires a ruthless, almost unnatural forward focus.
You become so intensely consumed with the execution of the present moment, the optimization of your future, that the past, even the people who built your foundation, just kind of fades away.
It's the cost of being the machine.
You streamline everything. You cut off anything that isn't helping you bowl the next perfect Yorker, including your own personal history.
You embrace the isolation Malinga taught you at the top of your run-up, and you just apply it to your entire life.
Wow. To summarize everything we've unpacked from your sources today, Jasprit Bumrah is a masterclass in embracing what makes you weird.
He really didn't conform to the blueprints.
Not at all. He took a tennis ball hallway trick, combined it with biomechanical anomalies that defy traditional physics, and layered on extreme mental discipline to become the undisputed greatest modern fast bowler.
But he leaves us with a really complex legacy to ponder. We often celebrate loyalty to our roots, this deeply romanticized idea of never forgetting where you came from and honoring those who helped you.
Right, it's a huge part of sports mythology.
But looking at Bumrah's complete detachment from his early days and his relentless solitary focus on his own internal analysis, does true world-changing greatness actually require us to leave our past completely behind?
That is a heavy, heavy question to leave you with. Thank you so much for sharing these sources and joining us on this deep dive today. Keep exploring, keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time.